today's lesson, we're going to be working with a new file, and we are going to be looking at using a spreadsheet to create a budget. And I've created a fictional company called the COVID Shirt Company, and we're just going to enter in the budgets for this company. So we're pretending that this is a brand new company that's just started up, and we're trying to figure out our costs for that startup and then our budget going forward. So the first thing that we're going to do, and I've entered all the budgeted and the actual costs in for you. So the differences between these, and these were in the assignment previous to this, looking at the differences and looking at some of the information in budgets. But you have a planned cost, what you think something is going to cost, and then you put in your actual cost, which is what it actually ended up costing in the end. And sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's the same. And I've added in this notes column that you should have in there for any of your budgets, just to kind of explain where the costs are coming from or why there's a difference between them. And I've added in, as you see at the bottom, 3 different sheets. So we have our expenses all on one sheet. Then we have our income coming in all on one sheet. And then we have a third sheet for our budget. Now you could put these all together, but just to keep them separate, just to keep it a little bit tidier, we've had them on 3 separate sheets. So we'll start with our expenses. And what I'm going to get you to do is to calculate that difference. So the difference is the difference between what you budgeted and what it actually costs. So right now those budgets are just there as numbers. So I'm going to change those so that they're currency. So it shows up as money. Now we've got those in dollars. And now to calculate the difference, it's a pretty easy equation. All it is just the actual and then subtract that from the budgeted. Okay, so that gives you a negative number because our actual cost was less than our budgeted cost. And so what we want to do there is I don't want that to show up as a negative number. When you're doing accounting, a negative number is actually shown a little bit differently. It's shown in brackets. So we're going to change this whole column from whatever it's showing up as right now, which is probably as a number, to accounting. And so now we see that this shows up with brackets around it to indicate that this is actually a negative number. And now I can copy this equation down. And so I see it goes back and forth between the negative numbers and positive numbers. The positive numbers, the ones that are not in brackets. The negative numbers, of course, the ones that are in brackets. And then I need to calculate my sum. So I've had a spot down at the bottom here for totals. And to do that, we're going to use the sum equation. So it's going to go equals sum. And it's actually made a guess for me as to what it thinks I'm going to do. So I'm just going to use that because it's right. Okay, it's going from C3 to C11, where all my costs are. And there's my sum. And then I can copy that across. Okay, and that's added those up. So my next step is going to be to do that for my income. And again, I'm going to calculate my actual income versus what I was hoping to make. And again, I'm going to make this an accounting term. Okay, and so you see there, it just has a little line there, and that's because they were the same. So rather than put in 0, it just put that little dash in to indicate that it is just a net 0 value. And I can copy that equation down. Okay, so I can see the first 2 were the actual right on the money. And then, of course, I have this big deficit in the difference between what I thought I was going to make and what I actually made. And that was based on a presumption that I would have sold more shirts in the first month than I'd actually sold. And again, this is just a fictitious company. It's just to give us a look at what might have happened if we had maybe higher expectations than maybe what we should have had for a new company. And again, we're going to calculate those sums. And again, it's figured out what we want that for. So I'll use their one, and I will go across here. And actually, I'm going to change this to that accounting term as well. again, just to be consistent and show that negative number. Okay, so now once you have all this done, and I will change this one as well. Didn't change that before, again, just to be consistent, to have that as an accounting term. Didn't make much of a difference there because it was a positive number. Just move that money sign over. And then our last step is to calculate our total budget. So to calculate this, I'm going to be using the numbers on the other two sheets. So I'm going to just, since I got all the work done, I just have to go and get that information. So for my budgeted expenses, I'm going to go equals, and I'm going to use this sum here, which was my budgeted expenses for the month of April, which is my startup month. And then my actual expenses, which again, I'm going to go back to that first sheet, and it's going to equal the sum of the actual expenses. And then my difference equals this one here. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my revenues. Go to my income, budgeted, my actual, and the difference. And again, I'm going to format these. So these ones, I want them to be currency. And then I want my difference to be in an accounting term. And so for this one, to calculate my totals, it's going to be my revenue minus my expenses. And for this whole row, I'm going to make this an accounting one. So here I can see that my budgeted expense for the month was going to be a deficit of $5,100. That's what I was expecting. My actual deficit for the month was $16,000, which was significantly more. But again, that was based on less sales than I had thought. And then this looks at the difference between these. So it was a difference between what I budgeted and my actual one was about an $11,000 difference, which means I've got a lot of money to make up in the next month if I want to stay a business and not fold. All right, so that's everything for today. The next assignment, we are going to be looking at calculating the actual costs of producing these t-shirts, and we'll do that tomorrow. I'll talk to you then.